Every year, the team at Q culminates insights from industry leaders to put together one of the most impactful reports our industry has. For those that are unaware, it's called the State of Digital, and Q has been the mastermind behind this for 6 years running. This year it's a little different in that we here at 3L and Rapturous had the distinct pleasure of laying out the site so it's more immersive and the data visualizations are even more impactful. But I realize that a lot of you are on the go, so what we decided to do is have a bit of a download. So I'm joined today by Brooke Hinzman, Director of Product Marketing at Q, to unpack all the insights in a very long but very important episode that is chock full of information and data that will help you plan out your digital transformation no matter where you are on that path. And more importantly, you're going to get all the juicy insights on what was surprising, what you really need to pay attention to, and why all of this matters. So this is my conversation with Brooke Hinzman from Q on the 6th annual 2025 State of Digital Report. Hey everyone, today I'm joined by Brooke Hinzman, and we are going to talk about Q's State of Digital in 2025. I think this is the 6th annual download of this data, and it is one of my favorite reports, if not my favorite report. And I'm not going to lie, this year it is my favorite report because us here at 3L and Rapturous, we had the distinct pleasure of being able to visualize all this data, get it into a landing page that is immersive and beautiful so all the restaurant leaders can spend time and absorbing all these takeaways, of which there are 6. But before we look at those 6, I do want to dive into methodology, Brooke. So can you tell us a little bit about how the State of Digital is done?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, I have to say it's my favorite report. And yes, I work at Q now, but even prior to Q, I was a bit of a fangirl about this report. And, especially this year with the pretty graphs and charts and kind of the walkthrough of the data and the illustration that you all have done on your team, it's, even that much better. So a little bit about the methodology. This is exclusive to enterprise restaurants and mainly fast casual and QSR. It's a voluntary survey that we sent out before the holiday to get like non-biased answers. And about 85% of the respondents are VP level or higher and really looking at decision makers.
I think that's really important to lean into because a lot of these reports are either done with easy access to other data that you don't really know 100% who fueled it. So it could have been an assistant for all you know. But what I love about this is you are getting those leaders, you are getting the decision makers. It is from their perspective. And so I think it's almost cleaner and it really is showing what they are focused on for the year coming up. And I would even venture to say the year beyond. And as a result, I think what you see from year to year, if you go back in the archives, is you do see an evolution and the next steps of those things. Would you agree with that? Is that some of the takeaways that you
Yeah.
had?
Yeah, absolutely. You do see kind of different trends, that pop up each year, but you'll see, and I know we're going to get into the trends
Yeah,
of
yeah.
here and kind of the big spotlight, but it's almost like it builds. Each year builds on top of the next, and then if you could, look back and have that perspective, it's almost like it was on this journey to get to where we're at, which I know we'll talk about the trends, but I'm pretty excited about a couple of them.
Yeah, we'll get right in a second. I think one of the things I think that this also shows that we don't really dig into, and it hasn't really been touched on, is we're not talking about easy stuff here. So we're not saying like, oh, I'm going to fire John and hire Jane at location 25, which can happen in a matter of a couple of months. We're talking about really big lifts, and because this is forward facing, and I think its intentions, and some of this might be underway already. That's where you also start to see some overlap, and if you're not careful, you could easily see maybe what seems like a duplication. And that's also why it was really important for us to visualize this correctly, because one, we know leaders don't have time, and so it has to be very apparent out of the gate. But two, it's also giving a little bit of grace that just because you didn't get that kiosk launch the whole way through the system last year doesn't mean it's become not valuable this year. And these tech shifts are monumental at times. I mean, even from the 3L side, doing a full custom build, we're doing this from basically from an accelerator base, but it's still an 8 to 12 month build. So if you ask us or a leader on, November 2024, what are your goals? Chances are by like October, November of 2025, we're just launching this and it's just the next step. So it's good to keep that in mind as well, I think.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, and you're so dovetailing into, one of our key trends, which we'll talk about, our direct digital ordering, but you're absolutely right. These tech shifts, they do take time, and it isn't something that can happen within hours or weeks or even, a month or 2. Most often, we're looking at quarters, if not years, to
Yeah.
fully roll out some of these shifts.
Yeah, I mean, right now, we're all the conversations we're happening with potential clients and even our current clients. It's 2026 and 2027 conversations. So
Yeah.
I say all that because I want leaders who are listening to this. I think it's easy to have the grass is always greener mentality, where, gosh, they're so far ahead. I'm never going to get there, or my company is just moving too slow. And the answer is really like, no, we're all kind of in this together. And yes, some companies are progressive compared to where your company may be. But I think what you'll see when we get in here is that there's a lot of symbiosis and a lot of worries and a lot of focal points that are shared, and a broad spectrum of brands that just aren't there yet, or may not even be on the path, but really want to be. So with that, let's cover the top six. I'll list them off, and then we're going to dive in one on one. And I'll probably shut up a little bit here and let you talk more. So I don't think this is in any particular order, but here they are from 1 to 6. The trends of 2025. Number 1 is winning back the guest is job number 1. Number 2 is tech consolidation is now a mandate. Number 3 is loyalty without unified data will fail. 4, kiosk surge does in fact continue. Number 5, the next frontier is kitchen innovation. And number 6, last but not least, is digital growth is stabilizing. And so going back to number 1, winning back the guest is job number 1. What are some data points that really stood out to you? Were there any that were surprising, or was it more of a confirmation?
Yeah. So, I guess, like, this kind of surprised me, but at the same time, it didn't. We really saw that brands are doubling down on their first party ordering. And that, they're doing that in order to own that guest relationship and then obviously ultimately increase unit level economics, get that profitability up for all their franchisees and locations that are corporate owned. So first party ordering was actually the largest revenue growth opportunity identified by our survey takers. So surprising, kind of, but not because the goal of owning that guest relationship, you do have to invest in first party ordering. I guess more surprising to me was that catering was that was at 40%, right? The first
Mm-hmm.
party ordering. Catering was at 24%. And I feel like I've heard a fair bit about catering, in the past, 12 to 18 months and initiatives. So it's almost like the pendulum is swinging to, that mealtime or first
Mm-hmm.
party online ordering, and then catering fell a little bit at just 24%. So not quite as much of a priority as that first party ordering. And then last thing that kind of surprised me was kiosk. Kiosk is not
Right.
identified as something that will drive revenue. And I know we'll talk kiosk when we talk about
Yeah.
kiosk
But
surge.
it was at
Yeah,
4% on this first.
yeah.
Yeah.
That is so interesting to me just because we have data. Obviously, we have a kiosk product that we have here at Q, and we have data that actually says it increases AOV. And then, of course, you throw on like a smart cross sell
Mm-hmm.
feature onto a kiosk, and then it just keeps going up. So, But again, these are the results speak for themselves on, how our fast casual and quick service brands are thinking.
Yeah, I don't mean to poke holes in the methodology, but I wonder how much of this is filtered through who actually has a true catering offering. But a lot of brands probably
Yeah.
have had a set it and forget it. Easy Cater has made it easy to actually not think about it much more because it's so turnkey. But now with Q's launch of Catering Plus, you have Lunchbox that also has their catering product. And then I think you have some other loud catering leaders like Earl Durdick, I probably said his last name wrong, proselytizing how much catering can really benefit the business. I wonder how true that 24% is today, considering a lot of the stuff is really fired up at the beginning of the year as
Yes.
opposed to at the end of last year. Again, not poking holes. I think, you know, we've done a good
Yeah.
job of this, but I wonder if this year coming up, do we see catering actually bump up a lot more? And then with
Yeah.
Kiosk, I was also surprised. I'm like 4%. I'm like,
4%.
that's
I
wild.
know. And I guess, again, like we'll go into the kiosk trend, but
Yeah,
it's almost like kiosks are everywhere, but they're not necessarily seen as a revenue growth driver. So that was a very interesting finding. But catering, think you're onto something. I do, knowing customers and having the pleasure of speaking to a lot of them the last couple of years. I do think it was a big priority probably last year, and maybe we'll see it, come back as a priority again next year. But definitely online ordering is really first party online ordering is where the chips are falling.
yeah. And I think that's something that's shared as a need for both fast casual and QSR brands. So on the second data visualization we see here is the top ordering channels for growth in 2025. Now QSR is absolutely top of the game when it comes to first party ordering, just
Yes,
sitting below 60%. Whereas counter that, fast casual is a little bit below 40%. But when we go back to kiosk, I mean, QSR is non-existent,
correct.
whereas fast casuals, I think maybe 6 or 7% is what it looks like here.
Yep,
um, I wonder, because when you look at, say, drive through and third party ordering, QSR is highly spiked compared to fast casual. So I wonder if it's, when you level out the averages, is that essentially what's happening with kiosk, for instance, with QSR? I would say, I'm like, really? But then when you think about QSR, how many people are going inside anymore? Most people
yeah,
are ordering it, getting it delivered, going through the drive-through.
yeah.
So that's where third party, first party, and drive-through probably take a lot more precedence over something that's going to sit inside the four walls.
Yeah, and I think again, going back to like the way that we ask this question, it's like, what is going to be your largest revenue growth opportunity? And I would argue that folks, and I and folks as in QSR and fast casual brands, they
Mhm.
do not see kiosk as a revenue growth engine. So I think that's why the percentage, at least for kiosk, is on the lower front because we'll get into the data as we
Mhm.
go a little bit further in our conversation. But kiosks are pretty prevalent in the survey takers as far as if they're in the store or launched already, and really
Yeah.
are seen as like an efficiency play. But I think you're spot on in the fact that like there are different like nuances between the service model of QSR and fast casual, of course, like, there's a difference in drive-through and even catering, between those 2 and kind of what the focus is. With QSR, obviously, their second most important is drive-through, and actually third most important is third-party digital ordering. So they're kind of online ordering, drive-through, and then third party, and then when you go to the fast casual side of the house, they're, of course, number 1 is that first party ordering and then catering and on-prem. So you'll see kind of that, little fork in the road,
Mhm.
shall we say,
Mhm.
as we get to the 2nd and 3rd priority.
Yeah, especially for those brands that where fast casual is going to present better in a catering situation.
Yes.
Compared to like a stack of burgers from McDonald's, which I love, and I don't care who knows it. Um, But yeah, it's really interesting to see. While they are symbiotic, fast casual and QSR, there are different priorities, and it makes a heck of a lot of sense. But moving on to the second one is tech consolidation is now a mandate. And so I love that phrasing because it does have the impact I think it deserves. We have gone too long. We're too far away from the big P word that we talked about on every single podcast for years to still have systems that are just glommed together that sort of talk to each other. And so the key insights from this are brands need a future proof foundation, efficiencies leading the charge, and unified systems win. So in this section of text consolidation, what was surprising to you?
I would say to me, it's almost like they're and we talked about this earlier, how the surveys build upon each other.
Mhm.
There's this continued theme that, was prevalent last year that consolidation and unified platforms, that's going to drive efficiency and it'll enable you to better manage data and so forth. But really the percentage of 64% that had picked that tech stack or system consolidation would
Mhm.
drive operational efficiency. That number, maybe surprised me a little bit, just knowing what else was on the list, like improved online ordering strategies, and I know we just talked about, first party ordering and that being a revenue growth engine,
Mhm.
to see that, underneath, and then, of course, follow this up with data orchestration and analytics. I feel like a lot of these things are really interrelated to that like whole data story, owning the guest, but also having this like well-oiled machine.
Mhm.
And when I say machine, I mean tech stack. Because to
Of
your
course.
point, there's no more like taping together your tech stack. You
We're
really
beyond
need
it.
to have this unified, platform and data to really not just, like, stay afloat, but actually get ahead and, impact the profitability of your business.
Yeah, I was really happy and unsurprised to see data orchestration and analytics at 55% of tech strategies driving operational efficiencies. I don't know how many times I've been on calls or just even at trade shows in general conversation where we almost had. I'm going to age myself a little bit. It was like the first season of South Park where there were the underpants gnomes. So like they just walked around stealing underpants, and when asked why, they're like they showed a chart that said steal underpants, then they didn't know what happens next, but profit. And it's like same thing with data. It's like get the data. We don't know what happens next, but profit. Good stuff. And it's like I think we're at the point now where it's like we got to fill in that blank. We need to know what we're seeing here. And I think with the sheer amount of data, it's gone beyond a moment where you become data drunk and you just become data comatose. It's just like, God, I don't even know anymore. And so I think, there's great players out there on the CDP side. Of course, there's great operational players like Q pulling data, but that question is the biggest question, which is, what am I supposed to do now? You
Yes.
know?
It's so funny the way you just phrased that, and love the reference, by the way, but it's like, we uncovered, like, doubling down on, like, owning the guest. Awesome. That is rich data. What are you gonna do with that? How are you going to, improve your business, improve profitability, and so forth? So it is filling in the middle, and I think
Right.
you're absolutely right that, like, your tech stack, consolidating the pieces and really, investing in that consolidation and data orchestration and analytics and, all of the other pieces that can drive efficiency, I think are really key here.
Yeah, and I think if I can proselytize a little bit about what we do. Of course, we're not the only players out there, but one of the phrases that I say to prospects, clients, friends is "out of the box keeps you in a box." And what I mean by that is not just a fun turn of phrase, but again, if you go away from checking the box of "I got the thing," so I got first party, I'm using Olo Serve, and all the love to Olo. Um, Great, yes, you are able to accept orders. But when you get the data and you look at the data, and the data are showing you that, hey, Wednesdays at 11 a.m., this sect of people really drive towards this product line, you can't do anything with that. because you're in the
Yeah.
box. I think that's where custom solutions really start to find a stride. And I think one of the stigmas that we still have in our industry is tech is seen as an expenditure.
Yeah.
And it drives me batty, of course, being, the hammer that only sees a nail. But it drives me batty because, well, there are so many things you can do once you know the story, but you're hamstrung if you don't break out of that mentality and see it as an investment and as something that needs
Yes.
to be supported, maintained, and grown. And I use the four walls. If you don't support and maintain your four walls, you're going to have weeds everywhere. You're going to have dirt. It'll be the ugliest building in the world that nobody wants to walk into. And yet, it's still a set it and forget it mentality, and that's really tough.
Yeah, 100%, and I think you're getting to somewhere there where it's like, it's not just about analyzing the data or getting first you have to get the data, right? And then you have to
Hmm.
analyze it, and then it's like, how are you gonna act on that data?
Right.
And,
And can you?
and can you? Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And kind of speaking on this, like, same consolidation, trend that we saw, another thing that we saw that it leans back into this whole data, guest data, scenario, which unified payments, having the on-prem and off-prem transactions, the importance of unifying the payments is very high. So
Hmm.
it's 87%, which again, that just kind of leans into this whole like people are not just thinking of consolidation in one area of their tech stack or business. It's like we need all of this to work together and orchestrate together.
Yeah, yeah, and it starts to make sense beyond the economics and the opportunity with, let's say, Olo Pay or even Punch's release of their wallet payments
Yeah.
system. But it's starting to make sense. Like this aligns. Um, it all ladders up to remembering what all of this is for, and this is all for guest convenience. And I think the number one takeaway for I think all of it is any inconvenience is one more reason to go to somewhere else where it's more convenient, and that is always going to be third party. And that's where you've lost the war at that point. And I hate to use martial metaphors, but our number one goal is to make our brands the most convenient place. And the way that it's done is by breaking out of those systems, creating a custom flow that makes sense for your brand, whether that's on prem, in the kitchen, digital, everywhere. Everything matters. And I think a lot of brands are starting to wake up to that. And this data, I think, is telling that story.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't have said it better.
So let's talk about loyalty, the great battle of loyalty that we have been in, loyalty 3.0, 4.0, whatever. Um, so loyalty without unified data will fail. And I think we're seeing it. I don't know how many brands have told me that they've stepped away from their loyalty provider because it just isn't working. So the key insights from this section are data investments are up significantly. Loyalty 3.0 remains elusive, and then unified data can be loyalty's savior, which is big word there. Um, what was surprising here? What was maybe confirming for you?
Yeah. Okay, so I already knew most restaurants love loyalty. Like, most of them do. So I was confirmed in the sense that it was our top technology investment area. But what was interesting to me is it shares that top spot with mobile apps. So for me, that brought things back to, okay, like, interesting. We're still going around this like direct ordering path because we're making that investment in, a mobile app. Yes, that kind of dovetails into perhaps a loyalty solution, but those were both at 39%. So having those tie was shocking to me. And then
Mm-hmm.
something that it brought a huge smile to my face. 3rd in the list was CDP or Data Lake. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's everyone's realizing, okay, we love our loyalty program. Our, loyal guests love this loyalty program that we have for them. But there's, like other guests. Maybe up
Yep,
to 80%, up to 85 in some cases that aren't part of that loyalty program. So, how do we increase their frequency? How do we make them part of the loyalty program? We only can do that if you have data. And of
that's
course,
right.
you get the data from, the first party ordering, and then you obviously have to look at your tech stack and consolidation and then can make those decisions.
Yeah, and I think specifically just adding more fuel to that fire is, CDP and data investments, they're up 11% this year compared to
Wild.
last, which means they are poised to outpace loyalty investments,
Yeah.
which are down 8% comparatively to last year. One of the things that I don't want to say surprised me, but annoyed me, because it definitely didn't surprise me, is that loyalty and marketing and mobile app were both 39%. And I think it's because people in the industry still have not separated those. And I think it's a problem. And I think it may be one of the keys to fixing loyalty. And I have a lot of friends at loyalty providers like, Thanks and Punch, SpendGo, Sparkfly, all of them. I love them all. And but what bugs me is when you're in a conversation about loyalty, an app is a word that comes out so early. It's like that is just the mechanism for delivering it. It is not loyalty. And I think that is why loyalty programs are failing because too much focus is put on an app coming from someone that builds apps.
Yeah.
It's not that. And what we know is almost every single Gen Z conversation, you will hear them say that they are constantly uninstalling and installing apps as needed because they're managing the storage on their devices. So the app is just not as important as we thought it was. And there's an app for that era. It's now more there's an app for right now, and I'm going to get rid of it. Also, they say Gen Zers, not that it's all about them, but I think a lot of us are starting to feel it. Whereas $2 off my $20 meal, I'm like, I don't think I care. I
Yeah.
don't care enough to engage. And that's going to be hard to hear because we want that to matter. I joke that if you added $2 to your bill, they would notice and they would care. But, it's all perspective, right? So I think the sooner that brand leaders can bifurcate loyalty and marketing from the app and see app as a delivery mechanism, the happier they're going to be with the results. Um, let's jump ahead to the next. There's two more cards here that I think are really interesting. The restaurants aiming to attract guests with loyalty and apps, like we just said. That we can go into deeper if you want, but going beyond regulars, which is what you were starting to touch on.
Yeah.
Loyalty programs are 77%, but tell me about some of those other numbers.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I love kind of the regular chat and beyond the regulars because when I think of loyalty, I think of them as like the regulars that are
Mm-hmm.
going into the restaurant and you're absolutely right. Like loyalty is at, these are tactics basically is the questions we ask like to better understand your guests. And loyalty is at 77%, but I think this is like a light of this report that CRM is the second at 52 and then a CDP is at 45% of like understanding that guest. So it's not only just about loyalty. You do have to have the data to understand. And again, I made that generalization that those regulars are part of your loyalty programs, but
Mm-hmm.
I go to restaurants that have loyalty programs and I might not be a part of them, but I might go, I might order online twice a week and go in once every other week. And unless they have, that CRM, CDP, and even you could go into marketing automation strategies, they will not be reaching me
Yeah.
and increasing my lifetime value.
Yeah, I think one of the other problems or challenges that we have within our industry is, to my knowledge, we really haven't taken the leap with points on where it needs to be. And I
Yeah.
think where it needs to be is we need to learn a lesson from our friends in the travel industry. And so I even have this issue with McDonald's. Again, I love McDonald's. I'm not afraid to say it. And I get it like probably once a month, probably once more than I should with my waistline, but here we are. But I have their app. Their app's brilliant. But ask me how to redeem my points in the drive through. I haven't figured it out, and I'm a pretty astute person. Now, if I book a flight, I know how to buy a flight with my miles, and it's because we've monetized the current. We've made it currency, and it just hasn't happened yet in a way that I think is sufficient. I think the brands that adopt points as a currency are going to see an astronomical lift in quote unquote loyalty because that's
Yeah.
essentially what people want. I don't want a blind 10% off my meal. I don't even know what 10% means
Yeah,
anymore. You know?
exactly. Or like, I there is a brand, I won't say names, but they keep offering me queso or free guac to come in, and that's not what I want. So, that is
Right.
not driving me to go in, but I think you're onto something that, like, the whole points value and you get to redeem what you want, but also making it easy. Like,
Right.
how do you redeem that? Like, to your point about, going through McDonald's drive-through and you know you have points or something, but you don't know how to redeem that. It's all about, like, convenience and,
Right.
you know, understanding the guests, then you can surface things to the guests that, they like, and it's not that I don't like guac, but
Yeah,
that's
it's
not
great.
the key thing that's going to bring me into, this certain fast casual restaurant.
Well, and it also puts you into as a brand, um, we all know the free trap. It
Yes,
sounds good on paper, but you get the wrong kind of guess, and in doing so, you put yourself into a situation of the Gap. For those that remember the Gap,
yes,
once again, dating myself. If you bought full price Gap apparel, you are dumb because everybody knew. Just wait, and you're going to get it half off in like a couple of months. And it's the same thing. Like, why would you pay for guac at that place when you know you're going to get a freebie at some point? And that's a terrible place to be as a marketer, as in a brand, where you've devalued your what could be one of your most stellar products.
yeah, 100%, and, you're absolutely right. I think balancing, like, the freebies or maybe not doing any freebies because after all, you have to make profit at your
At some
at your
point, right?
company, at some point, and, I'm not sure that, free guac is going to drive loyalty. It may actually decrease my guest lifetime value.
It could decrease, frequency for sure.
Yeah. Yep,
Um,
absolutely.
all right, the time has come. We're going to talk about kiosks finally. So the kiosk surge continues, which some people may be thinking, does it? Because didn't we just say it was so low? But the key takeaways here: QSRs are all in on kiosks, barriers do remain, and ROI is really untapped. So I'm going to kind of step back and let you roll with this because I'm
Yes.
also a little bit confused when I saw that disparity.
Alright. So they are not so we'll go back to, like, that trend number 1 where we talked about first party ordering being, like, the number 1 revenue growth engine for 2025, and kiosk was, like, at 4%. Here, we're talking about adoption, and we asked,
Hmm.
"Are you planning to use kiosk in 2025?" And 62% of brands will be using kiosk in 2025. That is interesting in the sense that, okay, why are they deploying kiosks if they're not gonna make money? Like,
Hmm.
what
Hmm.
sense is that? But it's actually about, like, that balancing operations and, the labor challenges and, of course, the minimum wage, you name it.
Hmm.
And it's not necessarily taking away a person that would take the order, it's just reallocating them to a different job. So it is all about efficiency rather than revenue growth. So that's why it's, like, really high here and we're like, kiosks are still hot, but
Hmm.
the focus is on, like, the labor piece, the operational efficiency piece.
That makes a lot of sense, and that's something I've been saying for a while. Not that I'm some sort of soothsayer here, but we have to remember. It's going to sound like the most obvious thing, but I do think people forget and they don't realize it. We are in a hospitality industry. There is nothing hospitable about a teenager behind a counter, doesn't want to be there. It may be embarrassed that they got that job because it's the only job they could get and they needed the money, plunking keys on and asking, "Is that it? Is that all? Is that it? You're done?" That's a horrible experience. Now switch that person into one of two paths or even both paths. A path where they are supporting the guest as the guest orders, answering questions if they're needed, highlighting some cool things to think about if it's their first time, and actually being a helper and a service member. Or on the other side, putting them on a path to actual tech support on prem. Now that's putting them onto a pathway that actually could lead them into a career either within the industry or exterior to the industry that is high value. And now they're a little bit more engaged, especially with how tech forward all of our kids and these youngsters are thinking these days. And yet we still plop them behind the counter. Is that it?
Yeah.
Is that it? And we wonder why our reviews are so low on prem.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting, and I've had recent experiences where I've thought, "Man, did I annoy them by ordering?"
Right.
But inside the kiosk data, we found some more, I would say, interesting things to pick out, and it's not about teenage labor, but, it's in the difference or in between QSR and fast casual. We are actually seeing that more QSR brands are using or planning to install kiosks, so
Mm,
80%. So in that QSR scenario where, you're, typically ordering quickly, it's actually kind of an efficiency play there, and 80%, that's, like, crazy. So,
it's
like,
a lot.
8 out of 10 people that
Yeah.
that we surveyed said, "Yeah, like, we're doing that for QSRs." And then fast casual was 52% that
Which is
they're
still big.
planning to install. Yeah,
Yeah.
which that they're either using or planning to install, which is big. And I love how you took the labor piece and, it's giving that staff member more opportunities.
Right.
And it's not just, "Hey, let's just throw them doing something else." It's actually giving them more opportunities, and something that, and I know we'll get into this here in just a minute, something that my brain typically goes to is, okay, they could actually, yes, they could float around the dining room, but they also could help with food. And I know one
Right.
of the key things in the kitchen is order accuracy and making sure that, guests get accurate orders. Also, it's, fast as it can be,
Hmm, hmm.
hot or cold, depending upon what you order. We don't want a hot milkshake and a cold French fry. But, so those things also come to mind for me when I think of like the efficiency that a kiosk can allow that team member.
That's right. Don't discount the power of a hot French fry in a cold milkshake, by the way.
Amen.
Um, so there are some barriers to adoption of kiosks. I think are important to put up there so people realize that they're not alone in that boat. And you could probably guess if you're listening. And it's cost, operations disruption, brand alignment is interesting. Time and resources and integration. The brand alignment one for me is interesting because I think I know what's meant by that. But one of the issues I have with kiosks as they are today is the same issue I have with digital menu boards as they still exist today. And they are a thing just thrown against a wall or on a table. And it is so not thought through. It is not considered and it doesn't fit the brand experience. So no wonder they don't think there's brand alignment. I know brands that still think that digital menu boards aren't brand aligned because they're digital, they're cold, it's tech. But it's like we need interior designers and architects to actually think about how to make this a part of the system from day one, but also give paths for how to integrate it. And unfortunately, that isn't going to help the cost bar at
Yeah.
all.
I think you're absolutely right, and it's really about, like, that holistic guest experience, right? Like, you order online or you order on a kiosk, the brand should show up the same, you
Right.
know, in both places so that, and Joseph, I know that you love color.
Beaming.
Oh, I know you're beaming, but, it's super important, and I think you're right, like, when thinking about brand alignment being this big barrier to entry for kiosk, it is all about, like, "Oh, well, what about the images?" Can we do our own images? Can we create this custom page or custom flow? What's the splash screen gonna look like on the payment? All of these different details that go into, kiosk, and really it's like your brand voice is there and it should be
Right.
there. But I can totally understand, especially with, you know, looking at yesterday or several years back, why brand alignment would be a concern for some.
Yeah, and I am going to place some of the blame on our tech friends. They're especially the sales folks. Sorry, Nico. Sorry, Sean. Not that they're the ones to blame, but there's this whole idea of branded. Oh, and you can brand it. You can brand it. One, this isn't cattle, so stop branding things. Brand has a really real meaning. It's extremely powerful, and that's not it. What you're talking about is customizing the visual identity and the experience. But there isn't much customization. Just because I can select colors and maybe fonts if I'm lucky and throw a logo on it, maybe use my images, that is lower than table stakes. I don't even know if that would get you on most tables. And I think what we need to think about is, once again, you're already going to make the investment in the hardware and the engine of the kiosk. Take the time and the budget. I'm sorry to say it, and think through the digital experience from beginning to end. And don't just phone it in or go with out of the box. Out of the box keeps you in the box, and it's true here too. And
Yeah.
also, another quippy one liner a la Joseph is set it and forget it makes you regret it. And that's the other thing is like you throw it on the table, you did the thing, move on to the next. And I get it. Spinning plates, there are fires to put out, but that's just step one. You have to learn again from the data and find a way to improve and iterate. And
Yes.
if you're too busy for it, you got to find a way to get some time, because you can move the needle incrementally on these systems, especially first party, in your app, in the kiosks, if you're
Yes.
looking and paying attention.
Absolutely. And I think another thing that, isn't exactly said within this, but it's all of these ordering channels need to funnel to the same spot.
Yes.
You need to have that, back to kind of the tech consolidation. You need to have that unified commerce platform to have all of these different ordering channels and, branded. And I don't want to say branded because you just said I can't, but
Yeah.
um,
On
feeling
brand.
like your brand, as much as they possibly can, but they all need to funnel to the same spot. And then, of course, like we then need them on a ADS so that
Heck
everyone
of a
can make those
segue.
orders. And so it's like, yes, I love what you're saying about brand, but then it's also like, okay, well, how do we make these people come back? And one way that we can do that is by giving them the right food relatively quickly. And then, kind of going back to the teenager walking through the
Yeah.
dining room, hopefully having some smiles and hospitality and really giving them that brand experience through their expressions.
Well, I'm going to give you some loyalty points for the best segue, because the next one is, you may be wondering how much loyalty points are worth, and I'm not going to tell you. That's why loyalty 3.0 is an issue. So the next frontier, which is number 5, is kitchen innovation. Next frontier is kitchen innovation. So kitchens are overdue for a modern tech. Order accuracy challenges continue. And in fact, I recently heard it is like the number one bugaboo for most operators right now, and brands. And then investments needed to improve speed, accuracy, and throughput. So tell me about this, and I'm not a kitchen dude, so I got very little to say here.
I feel like you might not be a kitchen dude, but I bet you've had an inaccurate order.
Yes,
I
yes, I
know
have.
that I know you have. So when we asked our QSR and fast casual brands, you know, what is the largest opportunity for kitchen efficiency? And kind of Joseph, to your point, yes, like the kitchen has been ignored. And we need to not ignore it anymore. But 70% of brands are looking to improve order accuracy. And
Mm.
it's nearly 70%. It's actually 68% if you fact check me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But, that's
I think it's
up.
70 actually. We say 70% of brands said they are
Alright.
looking to, up from 64% last year. So this is
Yeah,
only increasing.
64. Yeah, 64 last year, so that increased. And, the second piece there is that accelerating speed of service. And, of course, like, we're in this culture of, like, now. I want it now.
Mhm.
And I feel like let's all blame Amazon for that
Yeah, happily.
because I ordered something yesterday about lunchtime and it came at 5 o'clock. So we're all expecting things to be now. So that's the second opportunity identified in kitchen efficiency. And then, of course, like, staff and team productivity, and then food waste as we kind of go down, the line there. And it's really wanting to, you know, they need to invest in these areas. Like, brands know they need to invest in these areas. They've identified them as opportunities and really drive improvements and hopefully retain the guest share, especially in I don't wanna say, like, this economy, but, we've all seen that, guests might be dining out less frequently,
Mhm.
than they were before, so how do we make that experience one where you can actually get someone to come back?
Right. Yeah, and I think some of this, it's easy to look at the kitchen as a microcosm or as a focal point, but we can't forget that a lot of this does start before it hits the kitchen. And I've had the distinct privilege of seeing many menu setups on digital ordering systems from the back end, and I'm like, this is wildly horrible. And no wonder orders are becoming inaccurate because what's getting sent to the kitchen is not correct. And I think that comes from
Yes,
Kiosk, it comes from the POS, and it comes from digital, first party ordering, even third party ordering, because that's being set up as well, which I think goes back to Q's whole reason for being, or shout from the rooftops one liner of a unified commerce system. That's what it
yes.
means.
Oh,
Um,
100%. And I would argue that, like, it is so important, how those orders surface in the kitchen, right? Like,
mhm.
what is coming up on that, KDS screen? Like, how do is there a modifier in that cheeseburger? Someone hates pickles. You've got to have that identified to have that order accuracy point. And then the other piece about service, um, there is speed of service is what I'm, kinda going
Mhm.
at. You do have a rhythm to your business, right? Like, there are almost predictions that can be made, and, we have the privilege of using that data, and we have something called the production optimization board to say, "Okay, like, you probably need to throw on about, 12 hamburger patties right now because
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
typically what you're, selling and looking at weather and all these different local events." So there is like a pull here for tech and even AI to improve areas of
Oh
like
man, we almost got through the
accuracy,
whole thing
speed of
wgot saying
service.
AI, by the way.
I know we
We
did.
we were so close.
We Sorry, Joseph, but, it
Yeah.
comes in this is one spot where I actually think again, it's all about the data and the systems, but
Mhm.
I think this is one spot where a prediction engine, is just so valuable for that kitchen.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
machine learning is so ripe for this, and I think,
it is.
mutual friends, I believe, Meredith Sandlin has been hot on this for years now, where the kitchen is like the number one place where AI and machine learning will really thrive
Yes.
and help so much.
Yes. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
I'm looking at this last card before we hop to number 6 about order accuracy being digital's Achilles heel, and what one of the things that we do when we're building digital experiences, which land on the .com and then in a hybrid app, is we spend a lot of time making sure that the usually Olo's menu system is clean, because what's in there is what we're going to pull through. And if we can pull through that menu data without having to affect it much at all, the cleaner and better it's going to be. And so it sometimes makes us push launches or timelines out a month or two to get it right first. And I think when you hop on a system like Q, I think you start to become rest assured that there will be that source of truth, and things are shared and it's not glommed together. And I think you can have some wins there.
Yeah, 100%, and, Q is very unique, it's like a data first platform, and there's different context to menu items, so I think you're absolutely right, it's really that core that's gonna help with the accuracy when it goes to the different channels. Um, definitely. Another thing you asked me about surprises earlier. I would say, talking about the biggest challenges of digital ordering, we just talked about order accuracy. This surprised me that number 2 was employees turning off the system.
Yeah.
So I just had to point that out that was another surprise, Joseph, that I didn't talk about earlier. But of course, in conjunction with that is throttling. And again, another place that I think that tech can really help is like promise ready times and really understanding, okay, what's happening in the kitchen and when am I going to be able to give, DoorDash this order and, Joseph his order and
Hmm.
give them accurate times on that front.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the moments of truth and the anxiety points within the guest experience, at least from the 3L side. And one of them is when, when can I expect this? And I kind of want to know that soon. I don't want to wait. So I had an experience, first party experience when my wife was working on a movie in Louisiana, specifically New Orleans. And so I'm alone. I went down to visit. I'm alone, and she had to work late, so I was going to order some pizza. Every time I tried to order Papa John's pizza, it was a 120-minute wait every single time.
Cool.
Monday, Friday, until finally I called. I was like, "Is it? Can I get it faster if I just pick it up?" And they're like, "Oh no, those numbers are wrong, man. You can have it in like 20, 25 minutes, and we'll have it delivered." I was like,
Yes.
"You should fix that because 5 times, over the course of 6 months, I've tried to order and I've canceled it because I'm like, I'm not waiting 2 hours."
Yeah.
And so I think that's so big. And I think it needs to be one of the things that are evaluated when you're looking at systems. And why are you looking at systems when Q's here? Stop looking at systems.
Yeah, stop looking at systems.
Don't be
Just here.
silly. Yeah, just go to Q.
But Joseph, I like how you casually threw out that your wife was working on a movie and
Yeah,
you
she's
missed.
in the movie industry. Or at
Yeah,
least
like
was. Now she
whatever.
has a more difficult job and one that has more glory, which is being a mama.
Oh,
Um,
I love that.
yeah,
Oh,
so let's talk about this last one and shore
yeah,
this baby up. Number 6, in no particular order, is digital growth has stabilized, with half of brands have over 26% digital sales. The order channel mix is more predictable, and brands are trading up to higher percent of digital sales categories. This
yeah.
did not surprise me because I eat, sleep, and breathe it. How about you?
Yeah, this one really and obviously I come from the restaurant tech space and I was with an online ordering um partner of yours
Hmm.
recently, but I this one did not surprise me. It almost like validated everything that I thought. The one piece that did surprise me is that fast casual has more digital adopters than QSR. So, like,
Mm,
that's interesting to me that, like, almost 60% of fast casual brands have over 26% digital sales. And I know there's many of the industry that talk about, like, getting to that 100% digital, which that was so key because, you want the guest data
right.
for, that 360 view of the guest, but now, we kinda talked about this earlier, but with payments, having, on and off from payments, getting to that 360-degree view of the guest, is possible. But I just find it so interesting that fast casual has kind of, like, leapfrogged, and then another thing about fast casual is 13%. I know 13% isn't a huge percent, but they have over 50%
Yeah.
digital sales. So that's,
Yep.
that's wild to me.
That's very wild to me. I mean, 50% of digital sales is awesome. I mean,
Yes.
that's so many brands that I talk to aren't even in double digits yet, or in very like just in the tens. And so what this is telling me is there's so much room for growth. Can we define what digital sales mean though? I want to make sure people realize it's not solely first party ordering or like ordering through .com.
Right. You're absolutely right. It is really just the digital umbrella. So it doesn't have to be direct digital. It is all digital sales um, that happen outside of the restaurant.
Yep. So that's also good to know. I think there's still so much room for growth there. It actually doesn't surprise me that QSR has a lower number because QSR has more convenient ordering mechanisms compared
Yeah.
to fast casual. So you have the drive through. I think the drive through is the X factor there.
Yeah.
You can roll through a drive through. You're not going to see that on a fast casual. Um, at least most fast casuals in general. And so I think that's a contributing factor. But yeah, the digital sales is just such a huge opportunity. And again, so many brands have adopted Olo, which I don't mind saying Olo. We have to shout out because they did sponsor this a little bit on a couple of the questions or one of the questions. So thank
They
you guys
did.
for doing
Shout
that.
out to Olo.
Yeah, gotta love them. But again, Ola serve and systems that are out of the box, it checks a box, but it's not enough. Especially when you look at all these numbers, you're not going to hit 26% of sales on an out of the box white labeled system. You've got to get in there and you've got to start tweaking some numbers and start tweaking the digital experience based on that data, um,
And
and
I
really take the next steps.
Yeah, and I would argue that if you
Please,
haven't gotten on the digital bandwagon, I think just starting, and it may be you start out of the box and graduate
absolutely,
into a, more bespoke, you know, um, app or website or even kiosk. But I think starting and, having confidence in the fact that, like, digital sales are stabilizing, but again, like, we're seeing the percentages of digital sales for each one of our, survey takers to, increase rather than
that's right.
decrease, which is great.
Yeah, it's not as an aggressive hockey stick upward
No,
momentum, but it is an upward momentum nonetheless. And
it
I
is.
think as time marches on, more and more people are seeing it. And I think the key too is as people start to watch their wallets even more, proselytizing that it is less expensive to go direct is key, to getting more and more sales. And digital sales have less of a operational impact, from a labor standpoint. Um, Again, it comes with its issues, and we've covered them, and I'm sure people know them already. But I would say, economically speaking, if you're a brand that's less than 50 units, you probably don't have the unit economics to make sense for a full custom build. But something is better than nothing, and you should be doing something, and you should be pushing it more and more. With first party, if you can get people to come first party, it's not so much about the system's ability to accept orders. You really have to test out the ease of use. If it's a white label, is it easy to use? Is it intuitive? Um, at that point, I don't care if you just slap a logo on it, so long as it's easy to use and at least one to one with DoorDash, or
Yep,
one to one with Uber Eats, where they're leading. And what that means is they are also creating behavioral shifts and expectations. So when we're building custom solutions, we are looking at symbiotic relationships with other industries like retail and travel, but we are also looking at DoorDash. We are also looking at Uber Eats, because if we can get people there in a way that is familiar, you're going to get more people pulling through. If you're above 50 units, you are going to see the ROI. You will. Like nearly immediately, you'll start to see more sales come through just by the very nature of it being easier to use. Um, so I think our last shout out before we land this beautiful plane of ours is to Mercy Chefs. Do you want to take that one?
yes, absolutely. So this year for the survey, we always had done like a little gift card, but this year we partnered with Mercy Chefs. So every single survey taker, we donated a meal. And Mercy Chefs is like a nonprofit profit organization that has like really chef inspired meals that they're going to give out to, in this case, I think it was like tornado and hurricane
Mm-hmm.
victims that have happened in, for recent times. So we were thrilled to partner with them and just so thankful for all of the survey takers because you helped us feed people. And who doesn't love that?
Yeah, especially people in need. I mean, we're all
Yes.
very privy to what has happened in Western North Carolina, where I live. Not in Western, but I do live in North Carolina now. And what's happening now? I mean, wildfires in LA, and we are in this age where we have the ability to help, and it's great that not only do we get amazing data to supply our industry with a forward-thinking strategy and things to make decisions based upon, hopefully inspired them with the content of this, but we've also found a way to help those in need, and I'm sure we'll be continuing to do so as we march ahead. That's one of the most brilliant things about our industry is this is a family, and I truly feel like that, even though I am ancillary to it. So, Brooke, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your mind. And I look forward to seeing you in person. And if you want to follow Brooke, please find her on LinkedIn. Do follow Q. They do this to help the industry, and this data is so rich. I encourage you to dive into the website, which, fair warning, it scrolls horizontally. I know this is a wild concept and it blew some minds, but just keep scrolling and you'll get used to it. I promise you. And I hope you enjoy.
That's so funny. Keep scrolling. And I love how Amir describes this report like a gift to the industry, but it truly is. And, I was at a different tech provider before, and I look forward to this report coming out. And I already touched on Joseph earlier. The like visualization of the report is just phenomenal. Like the data that we talked about today, you'll go to the report and it just pops out. So we're thrilled with it, and thank you so much for being our partner and having me on today.
Absolutely. All the love, Brooke. All the love, Q. Until next time. Cheers.